Welcome to Ujima Wednesdays. This month, during Ujima Wednesdays, we're actually studying artist political power. And I'm sorry, welcome to Codirect. That is actually what I should be saying. Welcome to Codirect. Every first week of the month, we do a little bit of organizational updates and some discussions to invite y'all more into the process of what's happening at Ujima. Again, this month at Ujima Wednesdays, we're studying artist political power, and next week begins our series. So join us for a thematically curated series of workshops and discussions centered on the importance of artists creating caring infrastructures and systems. So we have a little bit of updates and some discussion items. The updates will be about our new assemblies, our study team, as well as our voter affirmation process. And our discussion will be our latest endorsement request from Crane Ledge Woods. So I can just get started with the Ashe Cultural Assembly. All right. So as
just here, just some quick live logistics, and just want to double check with John. Is it okay if we run through these updates and then do the endorsement, John? Okay, all right, excellent, cool. Thank you, Sierra.
No problem. So as y'all may have seen, Ashe, the Cultural Assembly, the 2021 Cultural Assembly has started. It is October. Today, our Cultural Assembly grant has launched, and you can feel free to share that far and wide. bit.ly.com/Ashe grant is the link. And we hope that y'all will be able to join us and share this grant far and wide. So essentially how it will work is that artists will apply for the grant. Funding is up till $5,000. So they can apply for up to $5,000 of funding. And then Ujima members will vote on who receives funding. So super cool process. We partnered with a bunch of awesome organizations on this, including BECMA, which is the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, Artisan Asylum, thank you, Lars, Assets for Artists at Mass MoCA, the Create Well Fund, Mayor's Office of Art and Culture, Mayor's Office of Race and Resilience and Racial Equity, and the New England Foundation of the Arts, NEFA. So we're super excited to get that going. And as I mentioned earlier, alongside that, our workshops start next week. So these will be about a range of topics dealing with, as we stated earlier, artist political power. Some of our featured speakers include Eddie Torres from Grant Makers in the Arts, Brandon King from Resident Co-op, Rafael Espinal from the Freelancers Union, Joke Williams from the Freelancers Cooperative Initiative, Gilded, Oscar Perry Abello, who is from Next City, and curator Larry Osai Mensa. So we're super excited to get that started next week, and it's every Wednesday from 6 to 7:15. So we hope that y'all are able to join us. Alongside that, we will have our virtual exhibition launch and party / meet and greet on October 22nd. And so we'll have more details about that soon, but you can register online on the Eventbrite that Nia just dropped into the chat. Also coming soon is our artist hotline. Artists will be able to share their needs, desires for the local creative economy through our hotline campaign. So there will be a call-in number where you're asked a few questions and you get to leave a voicemail in response. And yeah, we're going to be dropping that in the next few weeks. So please keep your eyes peeled. And hopefully with the information that we receive, using this as part of our, what we would normally call a needs assembly, we're doing it all virtual now. We'll be reviewing the contributions to create action plans and future feasibility studies. And hopefully we'll find things to invest in on behalf of the cultural economy in Boston. Nia, is there anything that you would add? Is there anything I'm missing?
About Ashe? Just the only thing I want to say, just wanted to say really quickly how the participatory granting came together. So we started off with a $5,000 seed grant from the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, who was interested in partnering with us on a participatory process for artist grants. And Ujima said, we could match that so that we can have a bigger pot. So we matched that. And then we said, I actually think we should reach out for partnerships and see if they can match, to really see how big of a pool we can get to. So I believe we are at a $50,000 pool with the partners that Sierra mentioned. Laura said 10 times, damn. Yeah, exactly. And so that's super exciting because for anyone who was around when we launched in 2017, we had a participatory process for artist grants then, and we were actually working with a $5,000 grant from the Eastern Bank Foundation. And so we used that to give mini grants of $500 to artists. And so now we're excited that over the years, we've definitely said we want to refine the process in a whole bunch of different ways. So we're at the point where we can now offer artists up to $5,000 in grants, pretty low barrier, unrestricted for this round of grant making. And we know that it's only going to get bigger and better from there.
Yeah, so please share it out and invite your friends to apply. Nia, do you want to talk about A Loving Embrace, the 2021 Real Estate Assembly?
I sure do. So this is also another exciting development in Ujima's work. So at the end of 2020, around September, October, Ujima started an exploration with two CDCs in the area, with Fenway CDC and Somerville CDC. And they were interested in partnering our participatory process with their opportunities. And very specifically, they're interested in being able to offer their residents opportunities for direct ownership in their properties. And so we came together around that. So what we needed to figure out was what the Ujima Fund is able to do, really in the direction of providing direct ownership. It's not able to do that. So we have a long-term plan to get to a participatory process for direct ownership in their properties. But we have been able to figure out something that can happen in the short term with our current participatory process with the Ujima Fund as is. And so we're excited that in November, we're teaming up with Co-Everything, which is a partner that came in more recently. Many Ujima members may be familiar with them already. That's Miriam G's organization. Miriam G is a very active Ujima member, along with her husband, Declan Keefe. So the four of us are going to be presenting the Loving Embrace 2021 Real Estate Assembly in November, where those three organizations will present real estate investment opportunities to our members. We are reaching out to some additional friends and partners who have also been interested in expanding community ownership of land and real estate. And so, Charles, Fenway CDC and Somerville CDC. And so in November, members will be able to look at a list of about 10 or so real estate investment opportunities. And the aspiration is that we end 2021 with a ratified real estate investment plan for 2022. So this is exciting. If you're a voting member, we're going to talk about this a little later, gotten your voter affirmation survey from us that asks you to choose one or both of these assemblies, and that asks you to let us know what your intended participation in these assemblies are. And I guess the last thing that I'll say about this is real estate investment has always been an intended part of the Ujima Fund's portfolio. So if you look at our graph of sample opportunities, you'll see that we've modeled to be able to invest up to $250,000 in a real estate opportunity. And so we're excited that we're able to start to think about that at this point in time, again, with the longer term plan to do even more, and that's to be able to provide residents with direct ownership opportunities through a fund and a participatory process.
Thank you, Nia. last assembly that we will talk about today is the vocal assembly. So has come through a partnership with the Future is Present. So that is Charlotte Braithwaite, who's a professor of theater at MIT, as well as 4 other collaborators who are leading this work. And they want to talk about Ujima. And so through this partnership, MIT students, Ujima, and anybody that actually wants to join will be studying Ujima, our foundational documents, more political education work around the solidarity economy and what's happening, and all the stuff that we have going on. And they will be surfacing the relationship between theater, performance, political education, and organizing. So this will be happening online and in person at MIT's Black Box Theater. I believe it's called W97. From 7 to 9 p.m. So they'll have sessions every week, 4 sessions every week from Monday to Thursday. On October 15th, as I stated before, we'll be doing the long durational performance, which will be 12 hours, and then again on November 5th. So we hope that y'all will join us and come together for this. I think that they said something like, it lives inside the possibility of the human voice, song, chant, laughter, and grief. It lives in the open space of improvisation, intimate relation, and collaborative practice as methods for social change. So it sounds like it's going to be a lively, educational event, and we hope that everybody can join us in coming to these events. And lastly, I guess, Nia, do you want me to talk about the voter affirmation process, or would you like to?
I can do it, and hold me accountable for time because I want to make sure John has a chance to talk. So I'll try to be quick. So I mentioned this a little bit already. So we have a new practice at Ujima called voter affirmation. And what this practice is before each assembly or vote, we essentially want to make sure that our voting members are making decisions that they want to make. We think that one of the kind of big learnings that came out of our big 2019 vote, for example, which we called the epic vote, where we rolled up essentially, Charles is smiling, he remembers that, where we rolled up essentially 4 ballots into one, was that was probably too many decisions for people to make at one time, was one learning. And then the second was there were maybe 1 or 2 questions that we thought voting members wanted to have some decision-making power on or weigh in really concretely on. And actually, maybe we were not correct about that. And we thought that because some members have been asking the question, but maybe it was just kind of wanting to know and curiosity and less wanting to have very specific decision-making power in that instance. And also so those were 2 learnings from us. The third thing is, as you can imagine, it takes a lot of energy, time, effort to reach our quorum, which is 50% plus 1 of voting members. As we get more and more members, that number climbs higher and higher, and it definitely requires more and more effort. And so we want to do a couple of things. We want to make sure that voting members are only voting on decisions that they really care about, and that we are also providing as much preparation as possible for voting members to get prepared for a vote, so that can be helpful in our get out the vote efforts, so to speak. So before each voter assembly, we're sending voting members a voting affirmation form, and we're asking them a few questions. We're saying, we have you listed as a voting member. Is that accurate? Because some people have changed their memberships. And so that's one way of just kind of cleaning up our records, making sure they're accurate. For example, we do have a few people who made the decision to change to solidarity membership, for example. So that's our first check. Is that accurate? The second question we ask is, do you wish to retain your voting membership? So what we've done is we've created a resident membership that's a non-voting membership for Boston residents. And that's the way for people who are residents of Boston proper to register their residence, but to say, I'm not going to participate in the Ujima ecosystem as a voter. One of the things that member is allowed to do, as opposed, for example, to a solidarity member, that's a non-residential membership, is a resident member can complete a personalized investment plan, and that will feed into our master list for consideration for voters. But they are essentially opting out as a resident in the voting process. So we wanted to make sure we provided people with that option, so we're not bugging them every single time it's time to vote, or it's time for an assembly. And in addition to the resident membership, people who want to switch their membership, they can indicate other memberships that they want to switch to, like Solidarity, etc. Then the third thing that we do on the form is we say, here are some upcoming assemblies or votes. We provide a description the way we did earlier this evening, and we ask, what's your indicated, what's your intended participation? So a person can say, I'm participating in a particular vote or assembly, I'm participating in them all, or I'm not participating in any of them. And what we're going to do now is take those survey responses and use those to develop unique quorums for each vote. So for example, with the process so far, we're seeing, we've had a couple of people say, I'm not going to do any votes. We've had about an equal number of people choose both assemblies or votes to participate in. And some people who've said, I just want to participate in the real estate assembly, but not the cultural assembly. So it's also really a good bit of kind of data gathering for us. So we are really excited about the potential for this new practice, again, to really kind of refine our sense of what types of decisions our voting members want to make and when, and to provide that option. For this to really work, we need 100% participation on this survey. So we've already started, we've sent out original email. We're going to send a text every week to remaining survey members who don't complete the survey. We will soon send an email to our Solidarity members to ask for help, phone banking, text banking, and email banking, to get everyone to complete the form. And again, let us know by the time we start open the vote, which is November 1st, who's participating in what vote, and so then what the respective quorum is. All right, I'll stop. Because I definitely want to make sure John gets the airtime.
Thank you, Nia. So exciting. So John, I'll share my screen and we'll give you the floor to talk about our latest discussion point, the endorsement for Crane Woods.
Okay, before you share your screen, Sierra, I'm just curious, has anyone on the call heard of Crane Ledge Woods? Have we pricked your consciousness yet? Besides you, Nia? That's it. Okay. Oh, and you, Sierra. Okay. Well, the staff, because I've been talking to you a little bit. So, okay, let's, this is essentially a campaign launched by neighborhood groups in Hyde Park, Mattapan, and Roslindale to fight a development. And we do have a brief slide presentation. What we are asking for from the Boston Ujima Project is endorsement. There's a letter that we will send to the next mayor that will basically request that they preserve and protect a parcel of land and prevent it from being developed. So can we do the slide presentation, Sierra? You got it? Excellent, thank you. There you go. So there you go. I'm glad you made that switch. So here's the group. There are basically at the center of this coalition are 7 or 8 neighborhood associations, and these used to be the old neighborhood crime watches, and the key one is the Roseberry Ruskindale Road. That's chaired by a woman named Lokita Jackson. Helena Tongay is the head of the Belknap Neighborhood Association. all these neighborhood associations cover a few blocks, and they have turned into real organizing groups. And they are predominantly led by Black women. This is a very much a working class Black neighborhood in this area of Hyde Park and Mattapan slash it's sort of the woods are at the intersection of Hyde Park, Mattapan, and Rosendale. Next slide, please. Next, yeah. So what we're talking about is a 24-acre urban wild. And ironically, this land has been owned for the last 20 plus years by the Jubilee Christian Church, which is a big evangelical, 5,000 member, politically powerful and respected church that operates out of what used to be a shopping, a supermarket on Blue Hill Ave. I think they have a branch in Brockton and another one maybe in Stoughton, big church. And unfortunately, they tried to sell the land to the city several years ago, and the city whiffed on it. The price at that time was like $3 million. And they are now in an exclusive arrangement with a Dallas-based multinational development corporation called Lincoln Properties. And the deal is that if Lincoln Properties can convince the city of Boston and the Boston Planning and Development Agency to approve their plan, they're going to fork over in excess of $10 million. We're not sure because it's not public information, but a lot of money to Jubilee Christian Church. And the goal of this coalition is to convince all the parties involved that this needs to be conserved and that the church needs to be paid. Next slide, please. I believe that this is kind of a quintessential environmental justice issue. Here's some facts. We have 24 acres of urban wild. It's wooded. There was an attempt to develop it back, I think, in the 80s. So it's not 100-year-old trees, but sort of an assortment of 50-year-old trees and younger. But it's really doing a great job in that it supports wildlife. It is absolutely a carbon sink at the moment. And it's a cooler, it's the lungs of this neighborhood. There are no other parks around to speak of. I guess it's off American Legion Highway, which as you head up towards Roxbury does have the Audubon Nature Center a mile or two up the road, and is a tree-lined boulevard. But anyway, right now, Brain Ledge Woods is absolutely sort of absorbing runoff, potential flood water, and absorbing CO2 and cooling the area. Next slide, please. And this is just sort of the argument that particularly in neighborhoods like Hyde Park, Mattapan, where there are less amenities, having this kind of green infrastructure, which reduces heat island effect and flooding, is essential. I mean, it's actually a critical resource for the entire city of Boston. I would argue we should be in the business now, knowing what we know about the climate catastrophe, that every tree should be preserved as best possible. And this is definitely a climate justice neighborhood, as defined by the census tract, as defined by the recently passed roadmap bill that the legislature passed last year and forced Governor Baker to sign. There are definitions of climate justice neighborhoods. I think we get to that later. So next slide. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah. So EJ populations are areas where that basically are largely comprised of marginalized populations or are below the state's annual median household income. And this is definitely a climate justice neighborhood. So next slide. This just quickly shows, here's Hyde Park with the little arrow there. Hyde Park has, you'll hear arguments that Hyde Park neighborhood, which is where this is formally cited, has a lot of tree canopy, which may be true, but it also, as this slide shows, has lost the most over the last several years. Next slide. The development proposal is horrible on virtually every level. It's going to take an area that, as I said, is a carbon sink and create a heat island. And it's going to do it in a gentrifying, non-equity producing manner. There will be 9 or 10 buildings, which will house 270 rental apartments, a minimal number, 13%, 35 will be affordable. And one of the buildings will house the private pool and clubhouse. There will be 415 asphalt parking spaces. This is all cited on 14 of the 24 acres that now comprise this urban wild. Next slide, please. So if you're familiar, you can see Hyde Park Avenue down at the bottom of this slot, and American Legion Highway comes off of Hyde Park Ave and runs up past Franklin Park to Blue Hill Ave, several miles down the road. And there's a shopping mall there that has a Stop and Shop and a Walgreens. And the red area is the 24 acres of Crane Ledge Woods. So on the BPDA website, this is identified as 990 American Legion Highway. You'll recall from the very first picture, it's a beautiful woodland with some high granite cliffs, which gives you a tremendous view of the Stony Brook Valley, which is straddled by Hyde Park and Roslindale. Yeah, so that's the spot. Next slide. And that's what they're going to cram in there. So all those trees you saw, that little forest is going to have all these parking spaces and these buildings, which will not allow, will be basically high-end rental units. Next slide. And yeah, this is just the main argument that where we have a carbon sink and a forest doing its job to help us mitigate impending climate catastrophe, we're now going to have a heat island which will raise temperatures and allow more flooding and infrastructure damage in the area. Next slide. What's really incredible to me is that there are two processes going on. Once some of the neighbors were notified, the immediate abutters were notified, they started to mobilize. And so there's a community-based process, which has held now 4 public meetings, independent of the Boston Planning and Development Agency, 4 public meetings with an average attendance of 150 people who are unanimously opposed to development. Understand instinctively that this green infrastructure is priceless. And there is an ongoing, starting in after the initial project notification form was delivered at the beginning of the year, there has been 1 public BPDA meeting, and there's been a comment period. There's a process going on there, the so-called official process, but the people's process, having been to both, is way more vibrant. Next slide, please. I think it's really worth noting that there have been 450 comment letters, of which basically 420 were opposed to this development and 30 were in favor of it. We have the coalition have gathered 3,000 signatures from Boston and beyond, asking that the city of Boston find another solution for the use of this property. The coalition has submitted a number of sort of technical letters, really asking the city to evaluate the value of these woods. Next slide. Which is basically, amongst the applications was one for a review of wetlands, because this is part of the Charles River watershed. It borders the Neponset, but it's really the water that comes down from the hill feeds into the Charles River watershed. And there is real evidence of wetlands. There are a lot of vernal pools and whatnot. So we're asking the city to the Energy, Environment, and Open Spaces, the Parks Department, basically, and the Conservation Commission to evaluate that. The Audubon Society has, Mass Audubon has become an ally and is helping in that fight. The same group that helped organize around Melnia Cass, Speak for the Trees, is an ally. So we're working hard to kind of work within the system while conducting an external kind of power building political force. Next slide, please. And the 7-figure issue is, where can the money come from? The coalition at the beginning of this process, before the mayoral election was truly in full swing, petitioned the Janey administration to float a green bond for infrastructure. We believe that ultimately what has to happen is that some public or quasi-public entity like the Conservation Commission or trustees for the reservation or even Mass Audubon or some combination of fundraising needs to happen, but it needs to be public dollars. There's a lot of hopefully federal money flowing into the city, and green infrastructure should be part of that process. So that's the process we're trying to encourage. That's what we're asking allies to help encourage. That's the big issue. Next slide, please. So we ask folks to go on the website if you haven't already and explore it. There's a tremendous video there that sort of shows you what a beautiful spot it is. It's ironic that the developer kind of talks about, oh, all the trees are small and diseased, and it's, there's no wildlife, and sort of inaccurately downplays the value of the land, but Mother Nature is really doing her thing there. So we ask you to sign the petition. Get on the, there's a, if you go to the website, which is Save Crane Ledge Woods, you can sign the petition. You can get on the email mailing list. Always happy to receive funds. We have small expenses, but funding is helpful. And we've created a very simple letter that I've shared with Nia and Sierra and the Ujima crew, which would be helpful to have a central racial justice organization such as Ujima supporting this, because this is really an environmental justice issue. So I think that's the end of the presentation, and I'm more than happy to respond to questions.
Hey, John, I might have a question.
Please. Hi, Sienna.
Hi. Sorry, I'm dark here because I'm multitasking.
Right.
I apologize. I don't think I missed it, but did you already kind of maybe briefly share what counter proposals to full on, residential development that this group is open to? Or is it a sum zero development stance? I'm just
No, our
curious.
goal, no, our goal is no development, that this needs to be understood as green infrastructure, that we are at a time in planetary history where, I mean, we're hurtling towards climate catastrophe. And so
just regarding this
we
project,
are not open to development. What we'd really like to see is that this become publicly owned commons. We're open to creating some better trails, to having, some better stewardship of the land. I mean, basically, it hasn't been touched for the last 20 plus years. As I said, there was an attempt. There's kind of a crumbling asphalt driveway through the middle on the top of it. So we'd be happy, if it became actual park space.
Okay. I think the only reason I wonder is because I think, both mayors and the city of Boston has a focus on affordable housing.
Yep.
We know that has been a problem in how they go about doing it, as well as, as the BPDA, as many of us think of them as being fairly, lopsided and favoring commercial and real estate developers. So yeah, I just wondered if, if there would be some wins, given kind of the time that Boston is entering into. Will you win with a no development stance? Or do you have better arguments, with a potential, being open to other things? So that's what I was curious about.
Yeah, no.
John, just a second, John. So before you respond to that, just because you've got 1 minute, you did get one other question from Lars in the chat. But this question is recorded on the recording for sure, for you to maybe take back to your group and send to us, so that we can also record the question. And I don't know if this is helpful or not, Sienna, but I know when John and I spoke, I got the sense that, at least with regards to Jubilee is concerned, there is a goal to try to craft a win-win solution on that front. I understand that you're not necessarily talking about that piece, but I do think it's important. Okay, John answered the question in the chat. I do think it's important to to raise that the Save Crane Ledgewoods organization recognizes the investment that Jubilee has made over the years, and the understandable desire on Jubilee's part to benefit from that investment. And so they would definitely want to also, I think, come up with something that works for Jubilee as well. And then just really quickly in the
Thanks.
chat, Lars, thank you, Sienna, but great questions, thank you. And then just really quickly in the chat and for the recording, Lars asked, what has been the IAG perspective to date? And John's response was IAG, or is, I should say, IAG is opposed to development, and said, although that is not unanimous. And then this will be the last question, because we are at 7:15. John, you did a great job with time. Thank you so much. Lars asked, is Jubilee looking for the highest price, or do they just want a minimum? And you can either answer that quickly out loud or in the chat.
What I would say is that's not clear, not completely clear. I think, Jubilee has made an investment. We live in a capitalist system. They understand, they're doing good work. So we're good with paying them a fair market price. That's our goal, is to raise those kind of funds. We think it needs to be public funds, though, and we think the use needs to be public use, ultimately. And I do want to add, just, on the issue of affordable housing, we are for affordable housing, but you don't take down 14 acres of trees to create it. I mean, there are plenty of places along Hyde Park Ave, closer to public transportation, to the Purple Line, that are good spots. Build it there, not here.
Okay, and that wraps us up. Thank you so much, John. I'm going to take the spotlight off of you. Thank you so much for presenting your group's work to us. And as we've stated before, just in our endorsement process, so the Save Crane Ledgewoods group is looking for Ujima to sign onto their letter. And so, of course, we want to hear from everyone. We will recap this conversation in our staff wire that I believe is slated to come out in a couple of weeks. And then, as we said a few weeks ago, I'm not sure if this is set up yet, Sierra, but we do also have a text line that people can subscribe to very specifically get information about endorsement requests that come our way. So I think I want to say have about 2 or 3 weeks left of opportunity for people to weigh in on this particular effort and what they think Ujima's support should look like. And then just really quickly, and I do want to respect that Arts and Cultural Organizing team is on here to get started. There's quite the conversation happening in the chat. So I do just kind of want to say out loud for the recording what's happening. Solar said, we're in the weeds here, but is $16 million fair market or premium? John said, in my humble opinion, that's high. Okay. All right. So just wanted to kind of capture that piece. I am now going to stop the recording. And we will all say bye.